You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by Nax. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Today, we're going to talk about the future. Most organizations at some point struggle with how to strategically innovate. How do they go to the next level? We're going to talk about how do we solve that and how do you work towards that future, particularly around technology. Joining us today for this conversation are two leaders in Conexxus, Linda Toth, she is Managing Director, and Gray Taylor, Executive Director. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here.
So, Linda, let's just start out with you as Managing Director. You're responsible day-to-day operations, all that fun stuff. For those not familiar with Conexxus, can you just give us an overview about where Conexxus fits into the convenience industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the technology and standards organization for the industry. We have a heavy focus on standards, which allow organizations, vendors to write once, implement many for all of the implementations that they need to do with various device integrations, like how the point of sale talks to a dispenser, how data works, being passed back and forth as far as POS and back office and mobile applications, etc. We also have a heavy focus on knowledge. We do monthly webinars. We do infographics and white papers for the industry. And then we also have a focus on connections, advocacy, meaning what we do for the industry with other outside organizations that might prevent us from doing business as we would want to.
And unless you are accepting everything by cash and putting it in a cigar box, you need Conexxus, you need technology, you need to strategically innovate. Gray, you were there at the onset of Conexxus. What are the future forward things that are top of mind with you related to, let's just say, the tech roadmap?
Well, we founded, rebranded from PCAS to Conexxus. Part of that was the technology looking over the horizon and trying to make sense of all the shiny objects that were coming our way to see which ones that might actually benefit the industry. And the cool thing is that Conexxus has got a ton of industry experienced people. So, between David and Linda, and me, we've got probably over 100 years of experience in one way, shape, or form within the industry. And so we get to take that experience and take a look at the new stuff coming over. And so Conexxus is, number one, we stepped up our standards work, and we've just recently moved and migrated over to APIs with a defined data dictionary. Sounds boring? It's really taking the Tower of Babel and creating one language that everybody can speak with. But then we also looked at some of the things in the future. So we maintain a roadmap for the industry, which is we present at the Nax show, and it's always something that gets very high marks. And it's where we look over the horizon again and say, okay, well, here's computer vision. Here's autonomous vehicles. Here's EV chargers. Back in 2008, we were talking about that. We were talking about AI in 2018. These are some of the things that we bring together. We try to piece it together, and then we try to figure out how we can integrate it into our platforms, because innovation is really the key. How do we get this industry to start looking at embracing some of the stuff that adjacent industries are doing, which aren't anywhere near as fragmented as ours?
And part of the challenge is, of course, when you have one store or a few stores, it's really difficult to have the economies of scale. And as you mentioned, an incredibly fragmented industry. You have a lot more tech interest in an industry where there's 3 players or a couple dozen players.
Yeah, look at Dollar Store, right? There's 2 main players and a third, and they can innovate. Or Walgreens, so big that they can, if they want to put a new payment platform in, they could do it overnight. They move much faster than we can.
So we talk a lot, Linda, when I talk to reporters or something like that, and just saying the pace of change in our industry continues to accelerate because everyone expects convenience. Everybody is redefining convenience. And increasingly, when you look at how people are redefining convenience for their own terms, it's basically the 7-Eleven motto of anytime, anywhere. And that involves technology because that implies that somebody is not physically driving to your store all the time, grabbing something that they see in the store and then leaving the store. It could be ordering on an app. It could be delivery. It could be, you name it, all these other elements. And so for the last bunch of years, Conexxus has held an annual meeting where you bring together everybody and committees meet. Committees make significant decisions that impact not just the next year, but multiple years out. But what we want to talk about more is just the level of talent that is on stage and how they talk about strategically innovating and how that fits in to the next iteration of convenience. Can you give an overview of just some of the big themes that were present at this year's meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had two keynote speakers. We had Vish Ganapathy, who's head of retail and consumer goods for Google, and he was one of our keynotes. And a couple of things that he brought out, I think, really resonated with our group, and ties into what you just said. You know, we are swimming, if not drowning, in data. And, you know, we store a bunch of data as an industry, but we really don't know what to do with it. And partially that's lack of use cases. We don't know what to do with it. Part of it is a lack of skilled resources. You know, we just don't have the people to deal with the data. But also some of that data is really poor quality. And that ties back to what Gray was talking about with the API data dictionary. If we as an industry can standardize on what the data looks like, that's going to help all of us. But from a user point of view, you know, what used to be a need or an amazing experience is now an expectation, right? So the consumer has really changed what retailers need to deliver. And in fact, attention of the consumer is the new currency for a lot of us, right? With the pandemic, especially, you know, we're checking our phones more often for email. We have no time to do anything, and it's that whole attention of how do we get the consumer's attention, but then how do we deliver on that? How do we meet the customer where they're at and how they want it to be served up? We also had Anat Barron, who used to run Mike's Hard Lemonade, and she was talking about some of the same things that, you know, innovation is really what's driving our society at this point. And we really need to be able to give folks time to focus on innovation. But I think a recurring theme through a lot of presentations was innovation doesn't have to be, you know, something huge. Incremental changes oftentimes can drive big innovation. But sometimes you have to throw things away and just start over. It really depends on the situation. I think AI was a huge recurring theme through all of our presentations. And that was certainly a buzz afterwards for the attendees to continue that conversation. And I guess I'll let Gray throw in here anything that he took away from it or overheard.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was amazing about us, we're a tech organization, and Monday was all about culture. And the reason why that we started thinking about that 3-4 years ago, because we had Vish talking at the NACS show, and you know, Vish was up there at the time he was chief technology officer for Accenture Retail, and he said, "Let me tell you, everything we can tell you about technology, culture will eat that for lunch. If you don't have a culture behind it, you can buy all the technology that you want to, but you're going to be wasting your money." And the pace of change is one of those things where we better get used to it. I mean, today alone, I read 2 articles. One said 62% of the people said that they found a restaurant using Google search. All right. And NACS has got a program with Thriver that is about getting our stores online. That's the tip of the iceberg, because not only will you find a store, you're going to now start buying from a store. And Mercedes just announced today that they're putting voice artificial intelligence in a pilot in 2,000 of their cars to see if people can interact on a very high level and do things while they're driving. So, You match that up with the search engine, and what you have then is what I call drive-by commerce. It's while I'm on the road, I'm going to do some level of commerce, and I'm going to order ahead. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to have the computer telling me which store best fills my mission at this point. And that's going to require a lot of exposure of data that we traditionally, what Linda said, we traditionally hold dear in these big pots of things. We need to turn that inside out, or else we're going to miss that drive-by customer, because, again, the bigger guys can put all kinds of data out there that entices a consumer to come in. We have to play in that space because that's ultimately the last mile space.
One of the things that we mentioned earlier is we talked about PCATS, and PCATS was the original name of Conexxus. It evolved to Conexxus, of course. For those of you about 2 minutes ago, yes, you did hear, take away the P part, you did hear that other part there, and that's one of the joys of, telecommuting and some of those things. So that wasn't your imagination. I want to continue, Gray, with something that you talked about with just, the future. When we look at how do we plan for the future, is going to be in the car, whether it's our car or somebody else's car, it's going to be in the car. And we've talked a lot at NACS about road trips of late. We love going on road trips. We hear that road trips are up. People have, in hindsight, great memories about road trips. They don't necessarily remember that, hey, stop so-and-so from breathing my air or staring at me and all that stuff. But when you're on the road, the old model was you stopped when there was a sign that said gas, food, lodging, and you made your pick there. Now, you could be making your pick hundreds or dozens of miles away, and you might not even be making that pick. Your phone might be making that pick for you, or your car might be making that pick for you because it gets you. Is that really where Conexxus plays a significant role in how we're defining that future, I guess I should say, and some of those things, those details that go unnoticed are making it happen.
So if you look at the nature of brand is an emotional thing. And so what you've just described is I'm telling a computer what my needs are, and the computer is making a choice. The computers have no emotion. So they'll have no brand affiliation. They don't care if it's Billy Bob's versus this other chain that you like to go to, because it's going to be based on facts and it's going to be based on data available. And so where do we play in that? As we're sitting here standardizing the price book, standardizing on what inventory levels you have, the consumer, their shopping journey might be, I need a dozen roses. I need a 6-pack of Hoegaarden beer. I need to get my car washed. And oh yeah, I need to charge up my car. There may be only one retailer in the next 20 miles that can do that. And the computer will say, you can get all this stuff over here. Now you can have the best brand in the world across the street, but you didn't get that business because you didn't have it. Or you didn't expose the data well enough so that the computer saw, well, he's a viable alternative as well over here. Which one do you want to go to? So data is really going to be king, and how you can present it and how you can actually organize it is one of those things that's going to be very key to this new type of commerce. But it's also key to the one thing that I could tell somebody how they can survive in the future, and that is nimbleness and a culture of innovation. So if you have data organized and you can use it and everybody can access it, if you've got a nimble, innovative culture, nothing can come down the road that you can't handle. That's just it. It's when we get caught flat-footed. And this whole last mile or on the way commerce is one of those things that we see it down the road. Let's pay attention to it, and let's see it, all the various things that we need to do to be best at it.
And Linda, I think it ties into something that you said earlier. When you look at the future, it's daunting. We're not sure quite what it is. Where do you put all this money? Where do you put these big bets? But what you were saying earlier is incremental change can be a big change. And it ties into what we heard at the NACS State of the Industry Summit, where somebody from Casey's was talking about the idea is to have what he called NVP, minimally viable product. Get it out there, enhance it, and then you have something that you're not paralyzed by analysis. Is that an accurate representation of how the industry can best strategically innovate and move forward?
I think that's one of the ways, definitely. You know, at the recent conference, we had a presentation that was it was a panel discussion that I moderated with Impact 21 and WCAPRA, and both of those are consultants to the industry. And the thing that we focused on during that panel was, in some ways, it's common sense, but really be consumer centric and don't necessarily chase everything, right? Focus on what matters to you as a company, as a culture, as a brand, and really focus on what matters and make sure that you're collaborating across the industry such that, you know, you're involving operations and you're involving marketing and you're involving IT. And by doing that, you make sure that what you come out with at the end works for everybody across the organization and that you're not siloed. And again, that sounds like common sense, and it really is, but sometimes we forget that. And so I think very much that if you focus on what matters to your company and make sure that you're collaborating, then yes, you can most definitely do innovation.
You know, I think perfectionism also plays a barrier, right? So when you talk about an MVP, if you take a look at the first iPhone, you take a look at the first iteration of Google, the first iteration of Amazon, all of those things they would look absolutely foreign to what we use today. And that's because they got an MVP out in the marketplace, and then they let voice of customer come in and tell them which way to take it in the life cycle, rather than sitting there and saying, okay, well, it doesn't have this, let's wait until we have this, and so forth. Just get it out there. Throw it against the wall, especially in consumer environments. This is what Art Sebastian is talking about. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Get it out there with enough features that hooks the consumer, and then listen to the consumer, and that's the direction you need to go. Perfectionism kills more innovation than anything else.
I don't think that's unique to the tech field. I think that perfectionism, the paralysis by analysis, I think I'm guilty of that as well. So for those not familiar with Conexxus, those that were at the conference, high marks, as always. What can be some significant benefits that are easy to explain to those to get involved in Conexxus? And to me, what I heard from you both is maybe even summarizing it by 3 C's if you want to strategically innovate. You need to have the right culture. You need to have collaborations both internally and externally, and you need to define common goals. And perhaps it's not quite the roadmap, but that's at least 3 things that are common probably across the board, but particularly important for technology and standards. So going back to my question, where can somebody get a start working with Conexxus?
Well, I think one thing that is important for retailers to understand, even if they're not members, they are benefiting from Conexxus because their vendors are using standards which allow them to do the core functionality and then innovate on top of that. We do have a couple of ways for people to play with Conexxus, even if they're not members. We do monthly webinars. We have a number of resources for even individual store owners that are available on the Conexxus website. Things like infographics and white papers varying from data security, data privacy, other focused topics. And if you're a retailer and you're sort of on the fence about what Conexxus does, you can always come into the Innovation Research Committee. That's a standing committee that we have that you can join for a year for free, just to see what Conexxus is up to and to experience it and to really give your feedback and input into what the Conexxus organization is going to be working on.
Gray, you talked about the tech roadmap, and yes, it's impressive. It's difficult to describe with words when, on a piece of paper, everything links to everything. What are a couple of the things that you are either recently adding to this tech roadmap or considering adding that people may not be thinking about enough now? You had mentioned AI is something that you guys tackled, 4 or 5 years ago. What are things that are bubbling under that people maybe want to start Googling, if you will, if Google even knows about it?
Googling, yeah. The thing that on the roadmap that strikes me is that what we really attempt to do is build this in a progression. And so we've got all this sexy stuff out there, artificial intelligence, we've got driverless cars, we've got payments that are now done by, just your physical being. The thing is none of those things will happen unless you do the basics, the block and tackle today. And here's one of the issues we have. We're like, you've got to clean up your data. You really should keep your data in one location so that you don't have data latency as you're getting it from various places. And in cleaning up your data, then you can put a computer scientist on top to do the artificial intelligence analysis to get the value out of it. If you try to do AI without doing that, then you're wasting your money. So we really try to build this progression. And one of the things that kind of hurts this is that you get executives saying, well, you're just looking for more money. It works today. And the issue is for us to get the CEO to understand that it won't work for tomorrow. And when this wave hits you, it will be too late. You'll be red queening. You'll be responding at the last person to respond, and that's just to keep your market share. So it's really having, and we suggest this to each company, you should have your own roadmap. You should start with 10 years from now, what do we think the industry, our company, the customer, all these things, what's it going to look like, and how do we get to that to meet that need? And over the next 10 years, every project we get presented, we're going to look at it in context of that roadmap. If it doesn't serve the roadmap, we probably won't do it. It's a distraction. And so that becomes a managerial tool.
And it's very much a living document that just gets updated constantly, because if you think you know the future 10 years from now, or you know the future from 10 years from now, we need to talk, because I don't think there's many people that know what's going to happen. They say they do.
I'll tell you where the Dow is going to be in 10 years, right?
Then we may still want to talk.
Jeff, before we move on from that, I just want to say that the 2022 roadmap is on the Conexxus website. Anybody can download that for free. It's under resources. So go to conexxus.org and then resources. That's the 2022 version. And we'll be updating that to the 2023 version before the NACS show, where it will be unveiled.
Well, and Conexxus, of course, is like everything in the industry. It's has a little bit of twist to the spelling. It's CONEXXUS.org. You can go there. You can see the tech roadmap. You can find out how to get involved for free in Conexxus. You can also find out how to become a member and all kinds of resources there. Conexxus is the place that allows you to strategically innovate and define those next 10 years, because we don't want somebody else defining what our industry looks like in 10 years. It's the place to be. Thank you, Gray. Thank you, Linda, for joining us today. And let's talk about the future again soon.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.